All right, back to the economy now. President Trump says, and I'm going to quote, egg prices are way down from the Biden-inspired prices of just a few weeks ago. Groceries and gasoline are down. Also, now, if the Fed would do the right thing and lower interest rates, that would be great. End quote. That is from Mr. Trump. That is his second posting regarding Fed policy. So joining us now to chew on it, E.J. Antoni, Unleash Prosperity Senior Fellow and Heritage Foundation economist, and our very own Brian Brenberg, co-host of the fabulous Big Money Show every day from 1 to 3 p.m. EJ, what do you think about Mr. Trump's investment advice to the central bank?
Well, the irony, Larry, is the fact that the Fed already did cut rates. They did it last year right before the election. They did an emergency rate cut when none of the underlying data had really changed substantively. I mean, it was basically just election interference on the part of the central bank. And now that Trump is back in office, they are somehow blaming the inflation of the last several months on his policies that he hasn't even implemented yet. It makes absolutely no sense. Maybe the reason prices are up is the fact that they cut rates way too soon, which caused commodity prices to go back up, which then led to higher wholesale and retail prices.
But Brian, you know, Mr. Trump is quoting falling prices on eggs and gasoline. And as somebody who knows a bit about him, having worked in the first term, you know, he particularly keys to, oil prices and gasoline prices. So what do you think? Does he have a point, or should he keep his nose out of it and wait? I mean, long-term rates have also come down.
They have, and I like what he's doing, because I think the best way to force the Fed is to force the bond market by doing things the bond market sees as anti-inflationary, which egg price is good, gas price is good. And I'm with them on this. I mean, I think America wants a little bit lower interest rates, mostly because the biggest contributor to inflation right now is the stuck housing market, okay? And it's going to be stuck as long as mortgage rates stay high relative to those really low COVID rates. So I think he's speaking the right language. And if you listen to Scott Besson, of course, he's saying, look, the president's focused on the 10-year bond. And that's the right place to be focused. So do Doge. Keep bringing these prices down, and eventually the Fed has to concede. They'll say, okay, we've got to lower the prices because, Mr. President, your fiscal policy warrants it. And I like that he's going after that.
Yeah, and let's go to that fiscal policy stuff. You know, if you listen, AJ, if you listen to the liberal media, the only thing that's going on in the Trump administration is tariffs, okay? Now, we can talk about tariffs. I don't believe they're inflationary. I don't believe tariffs are recessionary. But there are other components. Brian just mentioned one of them, which is the Doge budget cutting. Let's not forget, very significant tax cuts, by the way, to go into place January 20th. Very significant deregulation. And we just had Secretary Burgum on about the importance of fossil fuels and getting energy production up and prices down. Now, what I'm saying to you is, EJ, I think the combination of tax cuts and deregulation and energy production is incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful. And I'm not reading about that in any of these mainstream media publications. They only want to harp on the tariffs, okay? But particularly the tax cuts. But the other tax cuts and deregulation could carry this economy into a blue-collar boom and bring prices down at the same time when you stick in the energy production. So what do you think, EJ? Is it all about tariffs, or is he talking about other things?
Larry, tariffs are such a small part of this entire equation. You're absolutely right. Everything you just outlined there, the entire supply side effort of this administration is truly remarkable. And you're right. That is what is going to carry this market. That is what is going to carry this economy. It's what's going to boost growth. It's what's going to boost standard of livings and reduce the cost of living. And if you need any proof of that, you can simply look at this president's first term, where he did all of these things. Now he's trying to do them even more, but he did them at least to some extent in his first term. It produced very positive results. We saw, for example, the average American got more in their weekly paycheck. Not only did they get more, but they could buy more with those larger paychecks. Conversely, the last administration under Biden, we saw exactly the opposite of these pro-growth, of these supply-side policies, essentially literally the opposite of everything Trump is trying to do right now. And the result was standard of living's going down while cost of living went went up.
And you know, Brian, here's the thing. I happen to agree with his policy of reciprocity. You tax me, I'm going to tax you. And they're taking advantage of us. I happen to agree with that. Moreover, I happen to agree with the idea that we should make this a more manufacturing-oriented economy, which is what he's trying to do, and that we should bring supply chains back to America, and he'll reward them with lower tax rates. I agree with all that. But the other reality is tariffs ain't that important. And give me tax cuts and deregulation and energy production, and I'm going to give you a boom. Tariffs or not. I saw it in the first term.
I totally agree with you, but the problem is you got a press who wants to fixate on the tariffs, right? Because think about this. A press that doesn't like him is not going to spend their time talking about, you know, tax rates coming down, full expensing for factory investment, for CapEx, right? That's all good stuff. The guys who don't like Trump are going to just forget about that. The problem with tariffs isn't that Trump is too focused on them. It's that the press is too focused on them because they see it as their wedge issue. But I agree with you. And getting manufacturing back to America, J.D. Vance had such a great speech the other day to all the tech leaders. What he said is, we want that here, not just the design stuff, but the building stuff. Because when we've outsourced the building, we've given our competitors a leg up to be the designers as well, Larry. He was so right on this. The administration's got good theory. They've got good policy. It's defensible. But they've got a press that wants to tell one part of the story, which means they've got to be extra good at telling the other part of the story. That's where they started slow. I think they're getting better now.
Good point. Very important. You know what? Kevin Hassett was on, NEC director Kevin Hassett, my dear, dear friend. He was on this show, and he was pitching tax cuts and deregulation and growth. I
saw it.
It was terrific stuff, and it's just the others, Scott Bessett and the others should take a page from his notebook because he was right on message. EJ, though, one thing bothers me before we go. The Federal Reserve, you know, this phrase, tariff inflation, quote unquote, okay? I'm just still worried that the Federal, even though I will give Jay Powell some credit for standing still and keeping his powder dry at the last meeting. Nonetheless, when you dig in and read the notes and the minutes and all the rest of that, tariff inflation, what about the other stuff? Here we go again. I'm just worried that's the only thing the Fed is watching, EJ.
Well, and Larry, it's so ridiculous because tariffs, by definition, are not inflationary. There is no effect on the money supply here. This actually has nothing to do with monetary policy. Think about it, if you have a higher cost, let's say, from a tariff, theoretically, on one item, and consumers have to spend more of their income on it, they will spend less of their income on something else because there's less money left. So you see lower demand for that other product or service, which puts downward pressure on that price. So the net effect is zero. If it were really true, Larry, that all of these tariffs in full were going to be passed on to the consumer, then you would simply see things like American dairy farmers pass the 270% tariff on to their Canadian customers that they have to deal with. But that's not the case. So clearly, we don't even have to worry about all of the costs of these tariffs getting passed to the consumers in the first place. There are a lot of elasticities involved. You have changes in exchange rates, et cetera. But again, just the idea that tariffs are inflationary, it's wrong.
It just comes out of thin air. It's completely unproven. You're right, by the way. If somebody pays a higher price for one thing, that means they're going to forego consumption of another thing, so the price goes back down. The only way you're going to get inflation is if the Fed roars up the printing presses, and that has nothing to do with tariffs anyway. EJ, Antoni, great stuff. Brian Brenberg, terrific stuff. Remember, folks, you can catch Brian on The Big Money Show, along with his co-hosts Taylor Riggs and Dagan McDowell and Jackie D'Angelo. It's a fabulous show. Weekdays, every day, 12 p.m. Eastern. I think I said 1 before, 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fabulous Fox Business.